Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. In keeping with local, state, and federal guidelines on COVID-19, correct social distancing is being maintained, masks worn, and the room has been sanitized, and the room will be sanitized after this session has been completed. This town hall is being hosted by the Wicomico County Airport Commission regarding the water project to the Salisbury Ocean City Wicomico Regional Airport, otherwise known as the Salisbury Regional Airport. My name is Calvin Peacock, the Wicomico County Airport Commission Chair and this evening's moderator. The purpose of this meeting is to provide a forum for the public to ask questions, express their concerns, and to provide legal and technical explanations and answers to the public in layman's terms with supporting documentation about the water project. Before we begin, the Wicomico County Airport Commission and the forum panel would like to express their gratitude and thanks to all the first responders, healthcare professionals, food workers, all the people who are keeping essential businesses open, volunteers, and government employees who put themselves at risk on the public's behalf during this pandemic crisis. Nothing like this happens without a lot of help, so I would like to take a few moments to also express my thank yous to the people. First of all, I would like to express a thank you to my wife, who has put up with my minimal interaction the past days in preparation for this forum. I'd like to also thank the County Executive, Bob Culver, and County Administrator, Wayne Strasburg, for supporting the Airport Commission in this endeavor. I'd like to thank the County Council President, Larry Dodd, and the County Council for the use of their phone number for the call-ins during this forum. I'd like to thank Councilman Joe Holloway of District 5, where the water project has the greatest impact, and for expressing his constituents' concerns for a public discussion. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Nicole Ackley for supporting our virtual forum. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Wicomico County Airport Commissioners Vice Chair Matt Kramer, Nola Arnold, John Cannon, Bud Church, Jerry DeCorano, and April Jackson. As we begin, we want to be clear that we are not here to change anyone's minds, but to give the public the most accurate, truthful information possible from the professionals whose skills have been employed directly in this project. To that point, I want to introduce the panel this evening, starting with George Miles and Buhr Engineering, Peter Bozick Jr., the Executive Vice President, Katherine McAllister, the Vice President, GMB will provide an overview of the approval process for providing water to the airport and explain the designation of a denied access line instituted by the state regarding the water line. GMB can also discuss the public health and safety needs, in addition to fire protection needs at the airport facilities. The next person that will make a presentation after GMB will be Paul Wilber, the Wicomico County Attorney. He will talk about the annexation law, pre-annexation resolution 2020, and airport water system agreement 21-2020 resolution. After Paul, Wicomico County Councilman Bill McCain, Councilman at Large, will report on the pre-annexation agreement negotiations between the City of Salisbury and Wicomico County in which he participated. Wicomico County Emergency Services Director Dave Shipley will talk about how the impact of the water project would be on the Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Department or whether there's any impact at all. We will also have Jake Day at some point when he has a moment to talk directly. He's volunteered to talk directly to the folks tonight on the city's stance on annexation of this water project. The last thing we will do is we'll have a question and answer period. First of all, we want to thank everyone for their participation and remind everyone about the scope of the questions and the comments. The scope is going to deal only with those questions that have to do with the water project regarding Salisbury Airport. We'd like to keep it tight to there. Anybody is welcome to email through this presentations. We will take phone calls when we start the question and answer period for the public. We'd like to start off with George Miles and Buhr will make their presentation first.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. And thank you to the public who's participating in this public forum. And thank you for giving George Miles and Buhr the opportunity to share engineering information about the project. I will be talking about two engineering aspects of the project. Namely, they are first, the choice of the water main extension over the alternative or the other option of the county having a standalone water system at the airport. Second, I will discuss activities over the past 6 years that generally go along with a public works project of this size and magnitude. After that, I'll turn it over to Katherine McAllister, who will cover three engineering aspects. First, she will discuss sanitary sewer service at the airport. Second, she will touch on the background associated with the connection point, which is near the 500,000-gallon elevated storage tank at Warwick Community College. And third, she will present some of the engineering features and design parameters for the actual project at hand. The need for this project was established years ago, and actually before the current county council and county executive were in office. So we go back to 2014, at which time the need for the project was identified, and George Miles and Buhr was involved in doing the feasibility study. We determined that the two most feasible options were either the county take on the responsibility to build a water supply, water treatment, storage, and distribution in a standalone system that would be county sponsored, versus a water main extension from the 12-inch water main and the elevated water storage tank at Warwick. Both options were technically feasible. We looked at a number of different factors in our assessment to come up with our recommendation. One thing that was fairly unique in this situation was the fact that the daily water supply at the airport is about 25,000 gallons per day, which means it's relatively low by municipal standards, but it's a little bit higher than what a typical commercial establishment would have. So it kind of pushes the envelope to package water plants and having commercial companies take care of water in the airport. The second unique aspect was the need for fire protection water and fire safety, because being in an airport and the fuels associated with airplanes and aviation, they can be very hazardous, they can be explosive, and you need high rates and large volumes. So in evaluating and making a choice between two feasible options, there were many factors that went into this consideration. And some of these factors included, which is the most obvious, is what was the initial capital construction cost, which costs more right today to build the system. The second factor we looked at was what are the annual operations costs in terms of the labor, chemicals, and energy to run that facility. We also looked at annual and the long-term maintenance cost regarding the need for, say, replacing pumps, replacing filters, painting storage tanks, and things of that nature. We looked at the mechanical reliability, comparing a water distribution line versus a water treatment facility with associated pumps and filters and equipment and distribution system. We looked at the energy use. We looked at the amount of chemicals that would be used. We noted that with a water treatment plant and in this location, it was a very high probability that we would be removing iron, and consequently that our water treatment facility would produce a byproduct being waste iron sludges, which would have to be dealt with. We looked at security considerations, environmental permitting, and the range between daily flows and emergency flows. Like I said, the daily flows are on the range of 20 to 25,000 gallons a day. The emergency flows go up to about 300,000 gallons in terms of storage and at high pumping rates. Now, when we evaluated those different factors, the majority of those factors favored the water main extension option. Now, we looked hard at the feasibility of the county establishing a water treatment facility because for a number of years, we've tried to consider the county be providing a municipal water service to the citizens of the county. And if the county already had a water department and municipal water systems, that might have swung the decision in the other direction towards the county water system versus the water main. But that was not the case. The county presently is not in the water system, but each time we get involved with county infrastructure projects, that's a strong consideration. And when there does become the right opportunity to start a water department, we would definitely recommend that to the county. But we determined it was not the right time or the right opportunity in this situation. Now, the storage component was a big factor in our minds favoring the water main. Since we were looking at needing upwards of 300,000 gallons of storage, we had the choice between building storage on the airport property. Ideally, when we do that, we would prefer an elevated water storage tank because having the water in the air automatically gives you water pressure that can be used as a reliable source for fighting fires. But in this case, elevated water tanks were not possible on the airport because of the planes. A ground level storage tank is the most practical option, and that requires specialized high flow fire pumps. They're high horsepower, high capacity, and something that would sit there essentially unused most of the time and ideally would never be used, but it would require a significant amount of maintenance to make sure that they would be ready when called upon. But we noted that the 500,000 gallon tank at Warwick had enough capacity, and it seemed to be more practical and economic to share that storage capacity by utilizing the tank at Warwick. It also, in terms of giving us the rated flow and the pressures we need without the need for pumping. Now, there are certain risks associated with the county well and treatment that are hard to quantify in this initial evaluation. We do anticipate that iron would be a constituent that needed treatment, but we also had to consider the potential for other contaminants, whether they're pesticides, agrochemicals from past farming operations, nitrates, any types of toxic chemicals that could have been illegally spilled or stored in the ground. And it was hard to put a dollar figure on those, but one thing we knew with certainty that the water main extension option would have avoided all those potential risks. So after our engineering assessment and discussion with the county, the water main extension was chosen over wells and water treatment plant at the airport. Now, in the 6 years since 2014 until today, the path of this project was such that with a feasible option identified, we then prepared a capital budget for the county to consider. And that budget included not just the construction cost to build the facility initially, but the legal expenses, the financial considerations, administrative cost, engineering cost, and contingency. And it was in the neighborhood of $3 million at the time. And that was, the county took that project and that budget and put it into their capital improvement program system. It was, and that project was approved by county, a number of years within their capital improvement budget. During the next 2 years, 2015 to 2017, we were on a search along with the county for funding to build this project. The areas that were looked at for funding included, and more specifically, we were looking for grant dollars, if possible, over loan dollars. But we looked at sources such as possible funding from the FAA, possible funding from USDA under the Rural Development Program. We looked at potential sources that would provide economic funding, such as the Community Development Block Grant. And then we also looked at different programs within the state of Maryland and the Maryland Department of the Environment that favors protecting safe drinking water. After a couple rounds of applications with the state Maryland Department of the Environment, the project was selected and approved for funding, and we're very fortunate that the funding was partially grant, which in the amount of $1.5 million, and the balance of the project, which now is a $4 million project, is in the form of a loan. So we have approximately 35 to 40% of this project is funded by grant from the state of Maryland, and the remainder is a loan. Once the funding was secured in 2017 to 2018, we got involved in the final design, and also we got involved in addressing different requirements associated with Maryland funding and Maryland rules and regulations. At that point, Maryland State Planning became involved, and contingent with this grant money and money being used by the state, they did not want this project to make it easy or convenient or be tapped for sprawl development, urban sprawl development, or what they would consider something that is not smart growth. They did not want this project to make it easy or convenient to turn areas that are basically rural residential into urban environment, into urban areas. In that regard, the state came through with a requirement that needed to be accepted by the county, and that's where the term denied access designation comes from. And it was imposed by the state and accepted by the county that this line is dedicated strictly to the airport property, the business center that is part of the airport property, and it was not intended for any other customer. Secondarily, the county council needed to make changes to their comprehensive water and sewer plan to allow this project to go through, and in that process, the county dedicated specifically this project only to the airport and no other customers. In 2019, when the final design was completed and the state funding requirements were met, the project was put out to bid, which was last summer. At that time, the actual dollars came in, and we got a real commitment from the state of Maryland through the Board of Public Works, because they knew exactly what the construction cost would be, and the project was funded and authorized. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Katherine to talk about some other of engineering aspects.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this project with you. I'm a senior project engineer with George Miles and Buhr, and I have been working at GMB and in the water wastewater engineering field for over 15 years. I would like to address just 3 items in reference to this project. First, I'm going to just touch upon the existing sewer service out at the airport, just so everybody has a better understanding of what is there. The airport parcel and the airport business park are served with public sewer that is provided by the city of Salisbury. The sewer was installed in the early 1980s, and that was to address concerns with the existing on-site sewer system, and also as part of the new terminal building construction project at that time. At the time in the 1980s when this project was underway, the water was not critical at that point. At that point, they did not see a need to put the money into the infrastructure to extend water. The sewer system consists of gravity sewer, which flows to 2 pump stations located at the airport, and ultimately it's pumped north along Airport Road to Mount Herman, where it then runs west along Mount Herman Road to Tillman Road, and then the sewer force main discharges into a city manhole located near Shoppers World on Tillman Road. From our knowledge, no one has ever tapped this existing sewer over the past 35 years since it's been in operation. In addition, we are unaware of any mandated annexation which may have occurred in this area due to the fact that sewer service was available. And that is located directly along Mount Herman Road. The second topic I'd like to get into in reference to the actual project at hand that we're discussing. And that's the reason that we decided to install the water main, propose to install the water main along Walston Switch Road and connect at the Warwick Community College. The city of Salisbury, they draw from multiple wells located at the city water plant downtown and also at the Paleo water plant on Naylor Mill Road. Water is treated at both of these locations and then is distributed throughout the city. The elevated tower at Warwick Community College is one of multiple water storage tanks within the city's system. The water tank, as Pete mentioned, is a 500,000 gallon per day tank, and it's tied to the city's entire system throughout the community. There's no additional wells or full treatment at Warwick Community College. It's strictly just an elevated tower and possibly some chlorine facilities. The elevated storage tank was constructed to provide additional storage volume to the city's system as a whole, and also to serve nearby facilities such as the college, Purdue Stadium, and businesses along Route 50. When reviewing the feasibility of connecting the airport to city municipal water, we did consider multiple routes. The connection point at Warwick Tower provided the most feasible for several reasons, one of them being the distance between Warwick and the airport compared to where other dead-end mains or water mains were located. And secondly, which was most important, is the pressure available at the location of the Warwick Tower. The pressure required to transmit water over 2 miles to the airport parcel and to serve the airport's needs is possible because we're connecting at the Warwick Tower. The third topic I'd like to just touch upon is just a couple of the design parameters associated with the proposed project. The designed water main extension, it proposes to install a 12-inch diameter water main along Walston Switch Road, which will continue to Airport Road, where it will serve the existing airport buildings and hangars. The water main will continue within the airport fenced grounds to the Airport Business Park located along Citation Drive, Falcon Drive, and Crosswinds Drive. The total amount of water main installation proposed is 24,000 linear feet, which is approximately 4.5 miles of water. The distance from Warwick to the airport parcel is 2.5 miles of that total of 4.5. The majority of the water main will be located in the grass shoulder within the county road right-of-way. A small portion will be located in paved areas where access to the grass shoulder was not available. In addition, the water main will be directionally drilled under Mount Herman Road, and that's to minimize any impacts to the paved surfaces. Per state requirements, there were no T's or access valves along this water main from the point where we tie in at Warwick to the point where we reach the airport parcel. For public safety reasons, the state did require us to install fire hydrants, and they will be located every 500 feet along the entire length of the main. Therefore, these hydrants can provide public safety to everybody along the full water main length. But the state was very strict upon the fact that there should be no T's or areas where it was meant for future growth. Due to the length of the water main being the full 4.5 miles, we do propose a chlorine booster station, and that will be installed directly on the airport property. So chlorine levels will be monitored to maintain the required levels of chlorine and to make sure that it continues to meet federal drinking water standards. Chlorine does dissipate with time, therefore means to dose chlorine had to be provided. All infrastructure associated with that, as I noted, will be located on the airport parcel. The city of Salisbury does have multiple chlorine booster stations throughout their distribution system, and they are familiar with operating these. The water mains and water services installed throughout the airport property and within the business park total 2.5 miles of the total 4.5. This 2.5 miles of public infrastructure within the airport would have been required with either alternative that was chosen. If there was an on-site water system, you would still have to install the 2.5 miles of distribution to serve all the buildings on that facility. The water demands at the airport do include the daily demands which Pete mentioned, in addition to the fire protection of 500 gallons per minute. The difference between the daily facility demands and the fire demands is, as Pete noted, could be 20 times higher. And that is a reason that the on-site system did have a lot of challenges trying to handle the difference in flow demands. One of the main factors that the state is providing funding, including grant funds to the Wicomico County, for this project was to address public health concerns with the existing wells. Extending the water main from the city does address this public health. In addition, it was justified to increase the size of the water main to provide the fire protection for public safety. A large portion of the cost is the installation, and going from a 6-inch main to a 12-inch main is just an additional material cost. But it's definitely justified to provide the fire safety by extending the main. The fire protection will provide economic benefit to the airport and also future economic opportunities for the airport and the whole Delmarva Peninsula. As Pete mentioned, I just want to state again that the state has supported this project as it is designed, and that is with a $1.5 million grant and a $2.9 million low-interest loan. Thank you again for giving us this opportunity, and I will turn it back over to Calvin or whoever's next.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
both of you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Next up is going to be Paul Wilber, County Attorney, and he will speak to the pre-annexation agreement, annexation, and how this impacts the local neighborhoods.
Thank you, Calvin. This water system out to the airport was a result of not only a lot of engineering work, but there was a negotiating team between the city and the county to work out how the water line would be put in, who would pay for it, and who would operate it. And that resulted in 2 agreements: the Airport Water Service Agreement and a pre-annexation covenant and agreement. Councilman McCain will address, I think, how the discussions occurred between the city and the county, but the overall result was the county will build and pay for this water line, then the city will operate and maintain it. So the first agreement is this Airport Water Service Agreement, which again is between just the city and the county. It provides that the county will construct it. The plans have also been approved by the city. It provides that the area to be served is limited at all times to the county-owned land known as the airport. And there is an exhibit attached to this agreement which shows the airport property, and it's the property that's what most of us would see as we would ride out there, bounded by the Walston Switch Road, Airport Road, Twilley Bridge Road, and Fuchs Road to the south. That is the area that this agreement relates to, and it's the area that has been the subject of the negotiation. As Katherine was mentioning, the new water main is denoted as a denied access line by the state of Maryland. That comes from MDE. Just as Katherine mentioned, the sewer line, which has been in existence for over 30 years, that is also denied access and has not, to my knowledge, had any additional connections other than the airport. This agreement goes on to say that neither the county nor the city have the authority to expand the area to be served. What that means is if there's going to be any expansion, it's going to start with the state of Maryland, with MDE. And all indications are from MDE is they want this to be a line which is solely for the airport property. This agreement goes on to say that if the state of Maryland allows the area to be served to be expanded in the future, then any privately owned land shall be annexed into the city. And I'd like to just talk about that for a second because I think a lot of people have questions about that. What would that entail, an annexation? Well, first of all, obviously the state of Maryland would have to allow additional connections. That would be the start point. Then the county would have to allow or amend its sewer and water plan. That would go through the county legislative process. Landowners of a parcel that would want to connect would need to either consent to or petition for an annexation. And the state law controls what an annexation is required to be, and the city has to follow the state law. One of the prime conditions is you have to be contiguous or adjacent to the city. And property owners would have to, if they wanted to come in, would need to be adjoining a current city boundary in some fashion. The state law states that if a parcel wants to come in, 25% of the qualified voters and 25% of the total assessed value have to petition or consent to come in. In reality, in my experience, annexations are generally presented by a petition from a landowner requesting that a parcel be annexed into the city. It's seldom, if ever, that I'm aware of, do you see a large area come in with that 25% requirement actually meaning anything. Usually it's 100% because it's one parcel, one landowner. It goes on in the water service agreement to say that the airport water system will be owned by the city after the county pays all outstanding loans or other financial obligations related to the airport water system. What that means in this particular case is the county will have a loan with the state for about $2.9 million, and that loan will have a term of 30 years. So the county will own that water line for that period of time before the city can own it. The loan has to be paid. And that ties into the second document, which is called the Pre-Annexation Covenant and Agreement. And that's between the city and the county. And it says that the airport property can either be annexed in, this is the airport I described earlier, if the county would petition the city to be annexed, or the expiration of 30 years from the date of signing of this agreement and the property becoming contiguous to the city of Salisbury. So that's probably the more likely scenario if it were ever to occur. So that's the subject of the pre-annexation agreement. It does not relate to any other parcels of land other than the airport. And those are the two documents which I think I've covered the overview on.
Thank you very much, Paul. Bill, would you like to address the negotiations between the City of Salisbury and Wicomico County on the pre-annexation?
Sure. Thank you, Calvin. Before I start, I do want to thank Calvin and the Airport Commission for arranging this town hall forum, and also I want to thank the participants here that are joining us this evening, and as well as the public viewers that are either watching or will be asking questions. So I want to thank everyone. I am Bill McCain. I'm the Wicomico County at-large representative, along with John Cannon, who is the other at-large representative. I had participated in the negotiations mostly around some of the language in the pre-annexation agreement, and that is why Calvin had asked me to participate this evening to shed some light on that. The Wicomico County Council held a work session on these agreements back on January the 21st. The Public Works Director at the time, Dallas Baker, presented to the council the water management agreement along with Katherine McAllister, who's also here with us this evening. And I'm not going to go through all that they shared because Katherine's done a very good job this evening along with Pete describing that. But they gave us a summary of how we basically got to where we are now and why this line was needed. This process has obviously been going on for several years, and the county had received the approval and funding from the state of Maryland for a denied access water line that is specific for use only for the airport. And based on the need of the airport, the fact that the existing wells were experiencing contamination, and for the economic importance and future of the airport and for the whole Delmarva region. So I'm not going to repeat everything that Ms. McAllister or Mr. Bozick have presented, but this agreement, as Mr. Baker just referred to, this is a basically standard agreement utilized by the city of Salisbury to extend public utility services such as water or sewer outside of their municipalities. Occasions arise for various reasons that result in the city of Salisbury expanding their public utility services outside of their boundaries. Years ago, when this would occur, the city would provide the services typically via an urban service agreement. However, the city of Salisbury has abandoned that policy some time ago, and now they provide such services via an operating agreement, of which a pre-annexation agreement is part of that. There was discussion when this was presented to the council back in January. There was discussion among council members pertaining to some of the wording, and frankly, including myself, I had some concerns around some of the wording in the pre-annexation agreement, and mostly due to the fact that the agreement is a relatively standard agreement, but as we all know, the airport obviously is a quite unique property, and we wanted some of the language to reflect the uniqueness of the airport property for the county. As a result of that, subsequent to the council meeting in early February, I attended a meeting with Weston Young, then the Assistant County Administrator, along with Mayor Day and City Council President Jack Heath, to address some of the language in the pre-annexation agreement. The concern was trying to match the intentions, which the city was very clear about. They had, no annexation was taking part here. The city was not, had no interest in annexing the airport. And thus, Mr. Young and I, we made some suggestions to make some modifications to the agreement. There was some discussion as to whether the legality of making these changes. Thus, what we agreed to was to have the county attorney and the city attorney to meet so as to address the suggestions and see if they could modify the language. Mr. Young and myself, we also met with County Executive Culver and County Administrator Wayne Strasburg, to share the summary of those meetings. Subsequent to that meeting, Mr. Strasburg, our County Administrator, suggested that we add a 30-year clause to the part of the pre-annexation agreement to basically mirror the loan terms. Thus, after numerous email exchanges and some language changes and several weeks with the attorneys negotiating back and forth, modifications were made to the pre-annexation agreement, and the 30-year clause was added. This was a very major change because there was no time frame in the original pre-annexation agreement. And also, even though this may sound minor, it was actually a pretty major change. The word "and" was also added, that property had to be contiguous to the corporate limits of Salisbury for any annexation to take place. And not to be repetitive, but just to read that section in the pre-annexation agreement, which is Part A of the pre-annexation agreement, which states that the city will allow the extension of the water utility service outside the city corporate limits to serve the property, which is the airport property, before any annexation happening. The earliest of the following must occur. 1, the owner petitioning for annexation, which in this case would be the county, or 2, the expiration of 30 years from the date of signing of this agreement, and that was a change that was made and added to this agreement, and that was the key word, and the property becoming contiguous to the city of Salisbury corporate limits. So that's how the clause currently reads. And just to wrap it up, just want to make sure that everyone realizes that this agreement and the associated resolutions that reflect them are specific to just the Wicomico County Regional Airport.
Thank you very much, Bill. I've got one quick question, and that is when it refers to the property, what was the definition of the property?
Yeah, the property is the Wicomico County Airport,
Okay, good.
Regional Airport.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dave, would you like to address any of the issues that may or may not impact the Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Department?
Yes, certainly. I'd like to make some observations. First thing I'd like to state is the Parsonsburg Fire Department is the first due fire company to the airport property, which means if there's a fire there, they would be the first company dispatched along with others that would be needed. Some background. Currently, tankers and engine tankers are dispatched to structure fires and alerts. That potentially is involving an airplane accident or one that they are preparing for out there at the airport due to the lack of a reliable water supply system. You have to use the tankers. So what the water project would provide a reliable water source, as has already been mentioned in prior presentation here, for the fire suppression activities and may mitigate the use of the fire department tankers to supply water. But that would be a decision ultimately made by the fire chiefs of the Parsonsburg Fire Department. It also would support fire suppression systems, sprinkler systems in the buildings out there at the airport, reducing the potential for fire damage and risk to firefighters, because if it's controlling the fire before they get there, it's keeping it from getting larger and being risky to them. Those are the observations I want to make about the system.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start the question and answer, Jake Day is on his way in, but while we're waiting, there are a couple of questions that I'm going to put before the panel that has been emailed in. Here's one. What impact will the Salisbury Regional Airport water extension project have on Kilburney Estates residents? And we can probably look at it in a two-part. One for GMB Engineering and the other one for Paul from the legal. Who would like to take the first?
I'll start, and Pete can add to this if he would like. As far as impacts to the Kilburney Estate neighborhood, they will not be allowed to tap into this water main unless many of the factors are approved, which we've talked about, which everybody has addressed. They'd have to have state approval, they'd have to have county approval to change the Wicomico water and sewer plan, and then they would also have to be asking to tap into that water line. But I would like to mention that one benefit to them is the fact that the state did make us put fire hydrants in every 500 feet. So they will now have, if there is a fire out there, there's a nearby fire hydrant to fill the tankers and to provide safety, public safety.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Pete?
Just from our perspective in terms of the engineering on this project over the years, there was really no intention or consideration that this project would affect Kilburn Estates.
Paul, do you have anything?
As I stated, the agreements are between the city and the county about the airport. At this time, there is no direct contractual relationship to Kilburn.
Okay.
If there was ever the day when the state would say there could be a connection of a Kilburn house, then, as Katherine and I have both stated, there's a multi-step process that would have to occur, and it would be initiated by the state saying start connections, if it were ever to occur, and the landowners petitioning to come in.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, because we have someone else that can answer directly to that. Thank you so much, Mayor Dave, for joining us. The mic is yours.
Mr. Peacock, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me start off by saying it's a pleasure to see half of your beautiful faces, and in this strange time, gathering in this strange way. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some thoughts. This is the first time that I have publicly spoken at any forum or public hearing on this matter, but I understand the importance of hearing from the city of Salisbury on this topic. You know, I want to echo something that was just said, that the topic of service to Kilburn Estates or the Wicomico mobile home park or any place other than the airport did not come up until public comment started to come in. So this was not a topic that was considered by, I believe, by anyone in the county or city administrations. There is certainly no nefarious effort or effort that is not being spoken publicly. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is to share the thoughts that I've shared with the Kilburn Homeowners Association, and I think they can speak to our intent. I want to acknowledge that I believe the concerns expressed are legitimate. They come from a place of real concern about the added expense of additional municipal taxation, not from a place of political encouragement or anything like that. I think this is genuine, but I think we can dispel the concerns. I also do want to, at some point in my comments this evening, if you'll afford me the time, Mr. Chair, to address the fire service question as well, because I think that's also a legitimate and a well-intentioned topic or subtopic on this issue. So, bottom line up front, the city of Salisbury has no desire to annex Kilburn Estates. And I think it's important to say that for people to hear that. And I also believe that there will never be an incentive for the city of Salisbury to annex Kilburn Estates. I don't believe incentive will exist to the taxpayers of the city of Salisbury who exist today. I also don't believe that in the lifetimes of any current living resident of Wicomico County that Kilburn Estates will be annexed into the city of Salisbury. I believe wholeheartedly in good planning decisions for both economic and fiscal reasons, that we should not be sprawling either through annexation or development in a low-density spread pattern from our core. And it would run counter to that objective, and I'll talk about why that's important. It would run counter to that objective for us to be annexing Kilburn Estates. So just by way of context, and I don't want to get too academic or anything, but by way of context, the purpose for a municipality in the state of Maryland is to provide a collectively agreed to level of increased services for a concentrated set of businesses and residents in order to promote quality of life and economic growth. And that's usually within a fairly concentrated part of a county in Maryland. You know, we've got 23 subdivisions of the state in our counties, and municipalities are really supposed to be an extra quality of life enhancing and economic development enhancing tool. Municipalities are treated under the Maryland Constitution as co-equal separate entities to counties, but may provide some of the same services, which is, you know, where I think some people get confused, so policing, things like that. But also remember that only counties can provide certain other services such as education, courts, jails. So both are necessary. Most Maryland municipalities provide water and sewer services. Not all of them, but most of them do. This is an important tool within counties for promoting growth and public health. In our area, failing septic systems will, in many cases, lead to the extension of public sewer services from multiple municipalities, not just Salisbury. Water may or may not be provided in parallel based on how that municipality treats it. And this is a really important point to remember about Salisbury. Our charter and code require today that those two things be provided simultaneously when someone petitions for annexation. So if the collective or 25% of the voters or 25% of the total value, representatives of the total value of the properties of Kilburney wanted to be annexed, by our charter and code, and we are not one to willy-nilly violate or amend or change or offer exception, our charter would require water and sewer to be provided, which would be a rather difficult and incredibly expensive process. It's not just about the pipes in the road, which is expensive. I don't know if any of you have been to Main Street or Division Street of late, but it's an expensive process to dig up asphalt and concrete and dirt and to put pipes under the ground. But on top of that, the pump stations required for sewer, for wastewater, are fairly expensive, large, complex things to build and more cumbersome than water. So the city council and I want to be clear, support the Wicomico County government application for and receipt of the $4.4 million in grants and low interest loans from the state of Maryland. The city will be fairly compensated for the water service outside our municipal boundaries in the near term at the same rate we're paid for any water service provided outside of our municipal boundaries. But there is no other financial incentive for us to annex anything, including the airport. The incentive, I believe, for the city of Salisbury to participate in this project overall is the positive economic impact on the Salisbury area that can come out of our airport. Extension of water will help retain Piedmont Airlines' 420 employees in Wicomico County. They're one of the 10 largest employers in our community. People may not realize what goes on out there. It's not just the commercial air service support, ticketing agents and TSA agents and Piedmont employees, pilots, et cetera. It's also all of the folks involved in the maintenance facility, which is an incredible asset, economic asset to this area. And I want to make sure people understand that it might not be in the city of Salisbury, but we care that it's here in our community. We care about what happens on the other side of that municipal boundary as well. It also helps to attract, I think, additional investment, and it was discussed earlier tonight, in new jobs and expanded commercial air service, which can support other growth, something our area needs and should be thinking about right now in this difficult economic climate. So in order to provide water outside of municipal boundaries, as has been discussed, the City of Salisbury Charter and Code require that we sign a pre-annexation agreement or that we annex before providing it. In this case, it's just a pre-annexation agreement with the property owner, in this case, Wicomico County. The City of Salisbury has many pre-annexation agreements, many of which are not executed currently, and many of those are active. Additionally, the City of Salisbury currently is processing more annexation requests than we have at any time in our history. All of these requests are adjacent to city property, to city limits, and do not extend into areas that are beyond the city's municipal growth area. All the areas we're talking about today are far beyond, miles in most cases beyond, the city's municipal growth boundary. As has been discussed tonight, annexation powers in Maryland provide a balance of power between property owners, and you've heard about exactly how, and the municipality. To clarify, I want to make sure that everyone understands that a pre-annexation agreement does allow a simple execution by the city. However, this pre-annexation agreement about the airport property requires, as Mr. McCain said, as Councilman McCain said, not only requires the passage of 30 years, but the annexation adjacent to the airport property, which I think is not only something that will take a long time, longer than 30 years, I think it's something that will not happen. And if I have any say in it, it won't. I don't think I'll be mayor, and I don't think I'll have a say in it when that time comes. But I do want to be clear that I don't think we'll get to that stage. So in considering an annexation, and let's talk about Kilburney and other properties out there for a second, the city has to consider the balance and associated revenue and expenses with any project. In the case of the airport, I don't think there's a good argument for us annexing. You got to think about what revenue we would get. We depend, 65% of our revenue comes from real property taxes. And there would be no real property taxes associated with the airport. There's the potential that there could be personal property taxes, but that is a very small percentage of our revenue and simply would not justify an annexation and the associated extension of services. With respect to Kilburney, the city of Salisbury has to apply the same critical assessment. Would such an annexation pay for itself? Could the provision of streetlights, curb, gutter, sidewalks, water lines, sewer lines, stormwater lines, and all city services be provided in a sustainable manner given the revenue potential from a single-use, low-density neighborhood? I think the answer is clearly no. And to illustrate that point, I point only to the costs associated with the 0.4-mile water and sewer project in Fitzwater Street. That's a $6 million project in current city streets that we own, possess, and are responsible for. There is absolutely no way that that project even pays for itself, and we're already responsible for that. We've already accepted the responsibility. Extending beyond our boundaries is fiscally irresponsible when it does not pay for itself, and we must apply that critical assessment. Lastly, I want to be clear that the City of Salisbury Comprehensive Plan is an important part in consideration here. That is a document that lays out and charts a path for our growth. And I believe that it clearly and carefully draws a boundary at the Salisbury bypass beyond which we should not grow and should not extend. So for each of these reasons, I support strongly the extension of the denied access water line to the Salisbury Regional Airport. And for each of these reasons, I will personally oppose the provision and extension of services and annexation of Kilburney Estates. And I want to assure the residents of Kilburney and Kilburney Estates and the neighboring mobile home park and anyone else living in the area that we value not only the interests of the City of Salisbury government, not only the interest of the City of Salisbury taxpayers, but the taxpayers of our region. Each and every one of you matter. We value what's important to you. We believe that the best outcome here is not an annexation of Kilburney Estates, not an annexation of the airport, but an extension of the denied access water line to the airport. In closing, I want to address a couple other things. The likely driver of any extension of service and subsequent annexation is, for public health reasons, is not failing wells. It is failing septic systems. And I want to be clear that sewer service to the airport already exists. It already exists. If there was risk, it already existed. I also want to be clear that this is not a case where running a sewer line parallel to a water line that we put in today is somehow easier because we've put in the water line. It is, again, an expensive, cumbersome proposition. The last thing I want to do is address the fire service question that Mr. Shipley brought up. This is really important. I understand the concern. When County Executive Pollitt ended the agreement that provided service from the Salisbury Fire Department to the airport, I wasn't mayor at the time. The current county executive wasn't county executive at the time. There were different negotiations going on. And when that happened, Parsonsburg Fire Department took over. Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Company took over service to the airport. What we know is that in addition to that service, the staff of Piedmont Airlines is expected to provide some level of fire protection to the aircraft and to the air crews and passengers at Salisbury Regional Airport. And each is, I'm sure, doing a good job currently and is going to continue to. The only thing that I expect to change is that with the provision of water, we will no longer see the staff of Piedmont Airlines having to provide that service, but it'll shift to whichever fire department is responsible for the airport, and that's a good thing. I also want to be clear that we will, as a matter of having a mutual aid agreement with Parsonsburg Fire Company, always provide backup support to our friends and our partners at Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Company. And I want to also be clear that if in some future generation, 2, 3, 4 generations from now, if the airport was annexed, that would also not necessarily mean that the fire service district would change. Now, again, I don't think any of us will be alive to see that. But if it were to happen, there is precedent for the provision of other means of providing basic services within the municipal boundaries of the city of Salisbury. You can see it for county properties inside of the city today. We have a pre-annexation agreement with Beaver Run Elementary School. We have many schools in the city of Salisbury. This building, in fact, in the city of Salisbury is responded to first by the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office, not the city of Salisbury. And that has to do with, for up until a year and a half ago, this was owned solely by Wicomico County, the building we're in tonight. The Wicomico County Sheriff's Office, which will soon be, if developed, will soon be in the city of Salisbury. None of those are provided first due service, even though they are owed that service. An equivalent service is provided by the county or through the county by another entity. So I want to point out that annexation, should it ever come many, many decades from now, is not an indicator necessarily that anyone would lose territory. And we always will be a good partner to our neighbors in that regard. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, but otherwise I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. And I appreciate all the hard work you've done to make this public conversation available.
Thank you, Mayor Day. Really appreciate that. That does address a lot of things. I do want to make one comment on the airport fire. Under the leadership of Dawn Veach, she did move the fire requirement away from Piedmont, and she has now had contract service always on the field during all the flights that Piedmont has per the FAA.
Forgive me then for misspeaking. That is a huge development, and credit goes to her and the entire team at the county for making that happen.
So we're good there. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Really appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into the question and answer session. I'm going to start with the first email that we got today. You've had one of the questions. The next question is, why can't the airport water supply be provided by drilling a deeper well on airport property? Who would like to handle that?
The simple answer is yes, it can be supplied, but a better alternative is the 12-inch water main extension.
Okay. Why is it a better?
For the reasons I mentioned in terms of reliability, sustainability, less energy use, less O&M costs, greater range of capacity, both for the day use and the fire protection use. It's a better all the way around.
Okay, the last question from this emailer is, why was it necessary to organize the forum so quickly, not allowing the Kilburn Estates Homeowner Association the time needed to inform 250 plus homeowners? And I will answer that one. The reason for it is because the Airport Commission felt like that the information about the water project had already been out there for in the public's eye for close to 2 months, certainly well prior to the County Council meeting on April the 5th, which is where a lot of the constituents in District 5 had expressed their concerns. They already had questions. So after review, the Airport Commission felt like that we are not here to sit there and tell them about a project they're already aware of, but that we need to talk to them about their concerns and answer their questions. And waiting later was not going to be helpful for them. So that completes that email. The next one. how has the airport been operational all these years if the water is so bad? Does the Salisbury Airport currently have a water filtration system?
I can just touch upon that. Yes, the terminal building itself does have a filtration system. It's your standard commercial filtration system, but that is limited in capacity, and the biggest problem is the existing wells currently on site. They're surface wells, so they're exposed to any of the contaminants, any of the gasoline that is spilled, and MDE has documented other contaminants that have been found in those wells. So they are surviving, but they don't drink that water. Most of all of those businesses have to bring in potable water, bottled water. And as far as expansions, you probably have not seen a lot going on at the airport in the last 20 years, and this is a major factor why. They just don't have the means just to meet new building codes with sprinklers and all of that with the current situation.
Thank you very much, Catherine. There's a fairly long letter here that was addressed to County Executive Culver. Without reading the whole thing, what I will do is get into some of those salient points. Many people have very valid questions as to why the water pipe to the airport is even necessary. Why can't the airport drill new wells, utilize a low-profile pressurized tank, and have a potable water treatment system on its premises?
I'll try to address that again. In the way the question is asked, it can be done that way, but it's not anywhere close to being equal comparison to what this project is intended to provide, and supply. As the question as asked does not really take into account what's needed for fire protection and storage. What we're talking about is municipal infrastructure. It's something that's intended to last 50 years. It's a different order of magnitude, and it affects the public in multiple ways that a simple, well and treatment system would not be able to handle. Going back to what was just said before, it's important to consider that the opportunities that come to that airport for different customers and businesses that would coexist with the airport, whether they're manufacturers, whether they're drone services, any commercial air services, those particular companies are not interested or will not invest in the airport if they have to take on the responsibility themselves to drill their own well, treat the water, maintain it, and also provide the fire protection. It's just not something that's inherent in the wheelhouse of what a business does, and more often than not, it will chase the business away. When the businesses that we're looking to attract at the airport, they have the expectation that they do not have to be in the water or sewer business, that they can do what they do and bring economic value to this area based on their business.
Thank you very much, Pete. The next part of the question, isn't the Warwick water tank already supplied by a well, and why is the water any different being in such a close proximity? And I believe you had addressed that earlier.
Yes, there is no well at the Warwick Community College or that tank. That tank is tied to the city's existing system where the wells are at their water plants, which is the Paleo water plant and the city water plant. So there's no well out there at Warwick.
The next item, Resolution 21-2020 also specifies a chlorine booster in paragraph 4, but does not specify where the chlorine booster will be located, water tower or airport.
Yeah, so I also clarified that in my presentation. It is at the airport property.
If Wicomico County will be paying for the chlorine booster, it should be located on the premises of the airport where, well, we've already done that.
It is.
See, regardless of the post-install maintenance agreement, which the city will be well compensated, the city will then own an improved chlorinated system that will benefit properties within the site, e.g. Warwick, Summer Drive, John Deere Drive, Purdue Stadium, all at the expense of the Wicomico County taxpayers. One part of this, I'm going to address myself, speaking to the $4.4 million. Of that 4.4, this is all going to pay for the water system. 1.5 of it is a grant, and the remaining 2.9 is a low-interest 30-year long-term loan. So 1.5 million of it is not paid just by the Wicomico County taxpayers, but the entire state, all the taxpayers in the state. So that's part of the break that we get, which leaves only 2.9 million that's going to be paid off by Wicomico County. That is considerably cheaper than the proposals that Mr. Peter Bozick had put forth earlier if we had tried to do anything on the premises of the airport, having its own system. Yes, Mayor Day.
May I make two very quick points?
Sure.
To that. The first is that the existing residents and businesses within the city of Salisbury do not need that chlorine booster station. This is to serve the airport. And so it's a part of this project. So it's not as if there's an added benefit coming to anyone else. It wouldn't be needed. The second is that, let me remind whoever wrote that email that the residents and property owners of the city of Salisbury are full Wicomico County taxpayers. Worth noting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Day. Moving along, there's a part in here, if there are no intentions other than the water delivery to the airport, then this is reasonable request to remove or modify the provisions of the area to be served from Resolution 21-2020 by addressing the statement contained within the second paragraph of the page 1, which currently reads, quote, will be beneficial to all parties and to the economic development in this region, unquote, along with omitting modifying paragraph 2B as written currently below. If the state of Maryland allows the area to be served to be expanded in the future, then any privately owned land will be annexed into the city, and a private landowner shall be required to reimburse the county for a proportionate share of the construction airport water system cost based upon the number of equivalent dwelling units approved for the private landowner per the facility provisions in the city municipal code. Anybody like to address that?
Sure, I'll address it.
Yeah.
As I indicated, the state of Maryland currently says this is a denied access line, just like the sewer line to the airport. If in the, I think, distant future, the state were to say that there could be other connections to the line, then it would take also county approval, amendment of the water and sewer plan. It would take the landowner to petition or consent to being annexed. It would take the city, as Mayor Day has just addressed, agreeing to do the annexation. And I think Mayor Day's indicated it's not in the comprehensive plan. It's outside the bypass.
Okay.
So I think it's a remote possibility.
Okay, I guess, and this may be my fault, because what the emailer is questioning here is can, in that second paragraph, if I understand this correctly, language be changed to where it will be beneficial to the airport in the region. B, if the state of Maryland allows the area to be served to be expanded in the future, and the existing or future private landowner will be affected area proves to be served, then any privately owned land shall be annexed into the city, and a private landowner shall be required to reimburse the county for a proportionate share of the construction airport water system cost based upon the number of equivalent dwelling units approved for the private landowner per the facility provisions in the city municipal code.
Mr. Peacock?
Yes.
I got this same email earlier
Okay,
today.
good. You can help me out on this.
There's one change between the two paragraphs presented, and I think Mr. Wilber already addressed this, that section or subtitle 4, annexation 4-401 of the Maryland Code speaks to this in the local government article. And it's the one change is the change that they are offering from then any privately owned land shall be annexed into the city to the future private landowner or existing private landowner would approve to be served. And I think Mr. Wilber has already explained how the landowner would consent. And if universal approval were inserted in here, that would actually contradict state law, where 25% of the property owners in a neighborhood could agree, and the other 75% could disagree, but would have to come in regardless. So while that may not comfort the gentleman who wrote the email, I don't think we can write a pre-annexation agreement that would violate state law. I don't think that would be legal.
That would be correct.
Yeah.
All right, then, that answers actually the whole paragraph, because there's an opinion on what, by retaining that statement, what it would really mean, and I don't think that would be accurate. So, all right, moving along to the next email. What is the cost comparison between the pipeline, including the long-term expense of a water bill, versus the installation and annual maintenance of a self-managed system? Who would like to handle that one?
I will start out, and the answer to that question is, I can't give you the numbers, and the answer is it depends.
Okay.
And it depends on a number of factors. The time horizon that you're talking about, changes in service, it depends on, other factors that are not known at this time. So, I'm sorry I can't give you a direct answer right now.
That's all right.
But when we did the feasibility study, the on-site water system was more expensive than extending the water main. And that's, like Pete mentioned, didn't even look at time horizons where in 30 years that mechanical equipment may have lived its useful life, because that's how that is with pumps and tanks and filters. So while a water main may last 50 years in the ground, a water treatment plant on site would require more money in the long run, in addition to the initial capital cost, which is higher.
Thank you, very good. Is a report publicly available that shows the cost comparison? The answer to that would be no.
Not at this time. I mean, the report was done in 2014, and now the full project scope has, altered somewhat in addition to the prices, construction prices. So it would not be applicable at this point.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a note. Thank you for giving our community a chance to discuss resolution number 21, 2020, airport water management. I'm trying to look at the big picture for our community. Though my experience in leading a nonprofit, I understand the value of a grant and how devastating it is to lose one. My biggest concern about delaying our efforts in bringing water to the airport is losing the $4 million and an amazing opportunity to expand our economy. Why the delay? It's been moving forward since 2016. The council and our mayor have been transparent and open with our community and have answered many questions. I hope to learn more this evening. I'm struggling to understand why this is not a priority. I look forward to a good conversation. Thank you for everyone's leadership, and I want to thank the emailer for their comments. Next one. Exactly where is the beginning of the water main connection, and where does it end?
So it's currently Chop Tank Electric is served by city water. Chop Tank Electric built a new facility recently right near Warwick Community College. So water is out in front of Chop Tank Electric, so we are connecting right at that point, that dead end point. And it will go to the airport property, and it will run just through the airport property, including the business park.
Is the entire, the answer's been there, but is the entire water main a denied access line?
Yes, the airport parcel itself can tap it within their own fence boundary. But up until the point where it hits the airport, it is denied access.
Okay. The Wicomico County, the next one is the Wicomico County water map found in the GMB report shows the entire area of the airport and surrounding areas. but the map excludes everything north of Walston Mobile Park to the water tower. Why is this missing from the map as it relates to the entire water, or the entire airport water line?
So the way the water and sewer plan is set up, there's 15 maps in the water and sewer plan, and they match to each other. So there is maybe 13 or 14 that would match up against the map we provided. But I would like to note that the county water and sewer plan actually hasn't been formally produced and updated since 2010. So this map is an amendment map. So if you look up the 2010 water and sewer plan, you will not find this map. The state produced map 15 for this project because at the time, this area was not needed to show anything due to the fact that there was no water out there. So the line would continue on the map right above it in an amended Wicomico County water and sewer plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, I'd like to note to the public out there, please feel free to call in anytime on the phone numbers that have been advertised. Next one, question. The water project serves two purposes, emergency water and expansion water. How do you scope the water needs for the expansion when you have no idea what the eventual size of the expansion will be, nor do you know what types of businesses, if any, will end up there?
It's planning. You have to, in some ways, plan for the future. When we did the 2014 study, SWED, Salisbury Wicomico Economic Development Division, they had done a large, analysis of the area, and they had provided anticipated businesses and anticipated flows. So when we say the existing flow is 20,000, a little over 20,000 gallons per day, that's just the existing buildings there and they're used now. There's already a new drone hangar being constructed. There's multiple projects that are in the works that are under design phase, possibly even hoping to go into construction phase if water's available, and that will increase that flow. But the future flow that was looked at and was analyzed to the size of the water main was considerably more. It was closer to 150,000 gallons per day. And that was based on an economic analysis of the area done by another group.
And just to interject, the airport has a master plan that shows several, projected businesses and new hangars, et cetera.
Thank you for that, Bill. It does bring up a good point. Yeah, the master plan includes every possible piece of footage on that airport that can be grown, and that is necessary. That isn't something that we did on our own or Dawn Veach did on her own, but she did as a requirement from the FAA. Right. All of it has to be accounted for so that as growth goes forward, particularly for FAA funding, it has to be on that master plan. If it isn't, you don't get the funding.
Can I add to that from the engineering analysis, getting back to whether you have an on-site water plant versus the water main? When we're looking at flows in the range of 20,000 going up to 150,000, if we select the option of drilling wells and building a treatment plant, we would then have to figure out whether we would build a 50,000 gallon per day water plant or a 100,000 gallon per day water plant or a 150,000 gallon per day water plant. So we would have to kind of crystal ball and hopefully pick the right size that's not too big and will never be used for many years to come, or build a smaller plant that maybe in a short period of time we will have to expand. So some of those variables of cost impacts, is a risk that is avoided with the water main. And now with the investment that we put in the water main, we cover that whole range from 20,000 to 150,000. It's all available, at the fixed price that we're paying today.
Okay, thank you so much, Pete. The next question on this same email, what is in place now for emergency water? Is the airport currently operating in an unsafe manner?
I think you may have addressed that with the fact that you guys now have a contractor out there.
Yeah, no, we do have, there is water obviously out there but it is not potable water, but it is water that can be used for fire suppression and is with the contracted trucks and manpower that we presently have. It's required by the FAA, so it's not that we're short on emergency water. We have water. We just don't have anything anybody can drink.
In addition, I guess you have to continuously fill your trucks. It's not like it's an automatic availability with a fire hydrant.
Right. Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is on the truck. Next email. There is residential land for sale on Zillow that is located between Chop Tank Electric and the mobile park. The description in the listing says that the city water and sewer is available as part of the pre-annexation agreement.
No.
Where this land is located, it clearly would have to connect to the pipe that the country plans to run, or the county plans to run. I thought that this is a denied access line. How is this property able to tie into that line that the county plans to run? Why is this advertised when the resolution has not been voted on?
It definitely is a denied access line. I cannot speak to who wrote the property description there, but it's not accurate based on everything we've said here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Next one. The plans and resolution 21-2020 indicate an 8-inch pipe for the water main. As of today, the water main is now suddenly announced as being a 12-inch water main to be installed. Why?
I'm sorry, what reference to 8-inch?
Yeah, 8-inch. It said the plans and resolution 21-2020 indicate an 8-inch pipe for the water main.
So it's actually both. There's a 12-inch coming from Warwick. Once we get past a number of the hangars and get to the business park, we looped the business park with an 8-inch water main because that provided enough fire flow and capacity.
Okay.
So it has both 12 and 8. So when I also quoted the 24,000 linear feet, that's 12 and 8.
Okay, thank you. Has the business, this is another emailer, has any business or residential entity already applied to annex from the proposed water line? If so, can you provide the names?
No.
Okay, no, has any, is it the first part of the question? Has any business or residential entity already applied to annex from the proposed water line?
First of all, no. Second of all, along Route 50, John Deere Drive area, which is in the region, we have 4 ongoing annexation negotiations, which is the majority of the strip that's not on John Deere Drive, and there is already water service to some of those properties. There is some sewer service. That would be a separate issue. So, any correlation between ongoing annexation discussions, which are on city council agendas, and that may be driving the question, have nothing to do with this water line.
Okay, thank you. Have or will any elected official receive personal monetary compensation for any phase of this project?
No.
Not that any of us are aware of, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, certainly nothing I know of.
If so, they're going to jail.
There you go. Okay, let me get to the next question. Will individual businesses that might move to the airport property or that already are there have individual water meters to levy charges to them?
Yes, they, the way the airport leases work, my understanding is the management office handles that, but every individual building will be metered. So that can be handled through the airport management office.
Okay.
So it will be easy to meter each individual place.
There's a second part that says, just how will the water fees be charged?
That is based on existing city rates, which change. I guess you can probably find those online.
Right, that's in the water service agreement,
Yeah.
and it's standard out-of-city rate structure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to throw another list out here that we've gleaned. How has the airport been operational all these years if the water is so bad? And actually, I can actually answer that simply because the businesses, including the airport terminal, have had to buy bottled water. But there is enough water to handle any of the gray water needs and the fire suppression through the form of filling a fuel truck up, or a fire truck, I'm sorry. Let's see, what, if any, are the benefits of annexation?
I think I addressed that.
Yep.
In Maryland, municipalities, the purpose of them is largely to provide quality of life services and economic development, economic growth in a way that normally wouldn't happen without a collective agreement of an extra charge for additional services. Usually that includes water and sewer, a higher level of policing services, all sorts of things. I'm not sure what else. I mean, it really depends on what somebody wants. So if a low-density suburban single-family subdivision far from a city center exists, chances are they're not looking for the level of service. And so they might not see the benefit. Whereas the reason we have, I think, more annexation requests in the city of Salisbury right now than we've ever had at one time is because of the desire for economic growth, development. Those are mostly people looking to more intensely develop the property that they own, and they need city services to do that. So I hope that answers the emailer's questions. I don't know.
No, thank you very much, Mayor Day. Let's see. If Kilburnie is annexed, can you estimate what the increased cost taxes would be for residents? Is that something that...
I think they'd have to do the math on their property value and look at the city tax rate, 0.9832. Same it's been for the last 4 years. I'd encourage them to look at that and do the math against their property value and look at the trends of assessments. But they'd also have to, have a crystal ball and look out decades and see, what if this happened one day? Again, I think that's an exercise that would lead down a path of trying to make assumptions about assumptions. And again, I think it's something that's so unlikely to happen, it's not even worth spending time on.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Mayor. Understand the need for water is due to construction of manufacturing facilities at the airport. Is there supporting documentation for building these facilities available for review? Right now, the only thing that's under construction at the airport is the drone facility, and that is, actually they're starting to finish that out. Beyond that, we're certainly hoping and planning for future similar facilities, but there is nothing documented for review outside of what the plans are on the existing structure that's being constructed. What proof is there of a great need for this kind of facilities? The best answer that I can give at this point is that UAS, unmanned aircraft systems, otherwise known as drones, is becoming a very big and very fast portion of aviation and construction and technology. Dawn Veach, the airport manager, has placed Salisbury as kind of in the forefront of this to attract manufacturing and to attract other drone operations. The best answer I can give you to what proof is there is I can direct you to a Boeing study that was made in 2019 that talked about the number of technicians that's going to be needed. It was north of about 700,000 in this country. And that's the best guess because drone operations are being looked at heavily both for transportation as well as package delivery and many of the other areas in technology. So what we're trying to do at this point at the Salisbury Airport is place us in a position where we can attract these kinds of businesses for our growth. Let's see. Let's see, the last question here that we have really not covered is, isn't the Warwick water tank already supplied by well? We have answered that one. So that actually takes us up to almost at the end. We have received one email that has given us the ad from Zillow on that property. You know. So if anybody wants to take a look at that.
Yeah, but that language needs to be changed in those remarks.
Definitely. Oh, wait a minute, we have a couple more here, my bad. If this doesn't go full, I'm sorry.
Can I speak to the
Sure,
Zillow?
sure.
Actually, so I got a message about that too, and I got to see the ad. That is a piece of property that already has a pre-annexation agreement. So they're already entitled to water and sewer wherever they are. I have no idea where they are, but the ad itself in question, and I don't know the address, I don't know what road it's on, but they are already under a signed pre-annexation agreement.
Okay,
I have
great.
no idea where it is, but they are entitled to water and sewer.
Thank you very much on that.
And that doesn't mean they would use the denied access line.
Yeah.
The denied access line is dedicated to the airport. They would most likely have to install their own water line.
Okay.
The process to tap the denied access line would not be worthwhile for them.
If this doesn't go forward, how will it impact economic development, future jobs, and opportunities? And I'll answer that. As I just stated earlier about drones operation, as well as increased general aviation and jet operations that we would like to see come into the Salisbury Airport, it would probably, if we can't get this water into the airport in some fashion, we can expect to see a considerable decrease in future jobs. And I want to take a moment and also talk about our students, both in high school and in the universities of UMES and Salisbury University, who also have drone classes. This would also if we cannot attract these drone companies in here, it takes away from the opportunity of the students to have internships and possible jobs as well. I've been working closely with University of Maryland Eastern Shore in their aviation department, and this is one of the things that we were really looking forward to, is to be able to grow the airport to offer internships in aviation. I've been talking recently to some of the CTE people within Worcester County, Wicomico County, and Somerset County about aviation STEM programs. All of this will be impacted for the future, for our future of our kids. Is the water at the airport so bad? Why has the health department cleared a restaurant to operate there?
As noted earlier, the terminal building does have a commercial filtration system attached to it. So that is maintained and operated by a private company.
Okay.
But it's a small system, and it could not handle the demands or the future demands that the airport is looking for.
All right, thank you very much. Two questions here. As it stands today, what is the current limit on square footage for building structures at the airport? Also, well, there is none that I'm aware of at this point. Is anybody aware of any?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Also, what will the square footage increase to once the water main project is completed? On that, yes.
I think that what the person asking that question is asking about is if sprinkled, does the size of a sprinkled building, are you able to build a larger square footage building? And I don't know if our engineers can address that.
So it's very unique with especially fueled vehicles, aviation. So sprinkled standard commercial building, they might have the pressure for that. But the goal for this project was to provide fire protection via fire hydrants and to provide the flow available if a foam suppression system was to be installed. That will most likely require smaller tanks associated with the hangar itself that has to have a fire foam suppression system. It's very similar for large buildings like Gander Mountain. They have the small on-site storage tank right outside the building. They used to, and the same with the mall. They're such a large building that they need some additional storage to pull for the fire pumps. But this system will provide the 500 gallons per minute demand at the hydrants, in addition to be able to refill those tanks as needed. There's a regulation as to how fast they need to be refilled.
Okay.
And this system the potable water will be able to handle that, the water main.
Can I just, from a philosophical standpoint, on the last question and this question, I want to respond to those two writers if I can. Just that from the perspective of a public official, I think what the airport commission, what the county executive, what members of the county council, the city council, myself, our responsibility is not to identify, dictate, and narrowly support certain economic development, but to create an environment where economic growth can happen. And that means creating options and creating opportunity. It's not our job, again, to be narrow, but rather to allow an environment and create an environment where things can happen. And that may mean that there are many answers to some of these very specific questions that are being, good questions, but many answers to these very specific questions that are being asked.
And Mayor Day, just to expand upon that, Lyle Hogue, the president and CEO of Piedmont Airlines, has sent a letter to all the council in regards to the importance of having this project approved and moved forward. And one of the comments he made was investment in our airport will lay a foundation for economic growth on Delmarva for years to come. This community has asked for increased passenger service and new destinations. However, neither is likely if the county cannot remain competitive with other regional airports. And it goes into even more detail about the importance of, for future growth, that we have to have potable water and the ability from a fire suppression standpoint. In fact, the letter also states that the Salisbury Ocean City Regional Airport is the only airport that Piedmont serves that does not have its own dedicated facility for the air rescue and firefighting.
Thank you very much, Bill. The second part of this question, email, has the airport's master plan actually been approved by the FAA? And the answer to that is no. It has been before the FAA for some months now. It has now gotten to all the questions have been answered, and we were very, very close, and then COVID-19 happened. So recently I did talk to our assistant airport manager, Tony Rudy, about it, and he said that we're looking forward to expecting an answer from the FAA very shortly, and that all of their concerns have been answered. Next question. If the water is not potable, why is there a water fountain in the main terminal, and should I see a doctor since I drank from it? Should you have it moved?
Just to remind, there is a commercial filter system in the terminal building.
Okay.
It's a small system just to serve the terminal building.
All right. Let's see.
Calvin, PAC 14 actually slid me one that was called in on a different number.
Oh, yeah.
The question was, someone was asking about the mobile home park along Boston Switch Road. They were just asking what's being done about that. This is a denied access line, so they cannot access the water. And I don't know if they're referring to sewer as well, but there is no sewer there. So, that's all I can really share about that.
All right.
I would just add that the same conversation we've had about Kilburnie would apply to the Walston Mobile Home Park.
Hello? Yes? Yes. Could you stand by just 1 second?
I'm finished.
Oh, you finished? Okay, very good. I'm going to put you on speaker.
So you're taking the questions and handing them to them, is that the way it is?
I'm sorry?
Is this Calvin?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Hello?
Calvin?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, this is Joe Holloway.
Hi, Joe.
I have some questions of my own, and I've had some questions from some citizens that couldn't view this tonight.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
What involvement has Dawn Beach had in this process?
Well,
I said, what involvement has
I heard you, and she's been in this kind of from the beginning, or shortly after she came to work as the airport manager. I think there's a delay. Okay, Joe, did you get it?
Okay, I got that.
Okay. I think we have a delay here in the transmission, but go ahead.
That's fine.
What's your next question?
Okay, my next question is, okay, back on April 17th, our fellow council member asked if Dawn and the engineer working on the project present at the next could be present on the next council meeting.
We certainly can be
Yeah.
present, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Are you talking about the one, the next council meeting on May the 5th?
Yes.
And you're asking if Dawn Veach can be present there,
no, the GMB.
or JMB?
He said both.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, yeah, JMB has just said their answer is yes, they can be present there.
Wayne Strasburg's response was, no,
If.
Yeah.
wait a minute. That Dawn Beach was not involved in the water project.
Well, I mean, she certainly was aware, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I stand corrected then. I mean, I just,
So we
stand by.
started the 2014 study with the previous airport manager. I remember meeting with him, and that's where the project started. Dawn was definitely well aware when she came on board that the county was working to find funding for the project, but she has not been involved in the specific details about alternatives selected or how it's going to get there. She has not been involved in that. No, it was strictly, she was aware of it. It was initiated by the county, and the County Public Works Department really started it, us looking at it, because it was more of an infrastructure project. It was not airport management type of project. It's a public infrastructure project.
did you get that, Joe?
Trying to get away from this TV. Can
Hey,
you hear me?
yeah, I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind turning that down a little bit.
Okay, I have a few more questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind turning that down a little bit. Okay, I have a few more questions. Sure, go ahead. Okay, why was Mr. McCain chosen over John Cannon, who serves on the Airport Commission, to be involved in negotiations?
I can't
address
answer that. That's,
Right. I'll answer that. I mean, no one was chosen. After we had our meeting, I had expressed concerns in the January meeting about some of the language in the pre-annexation agreement. So no one was chosen. I just happened to be part of the meetings that Weston Young had with the mayor and the city council president, and I was present at those meetings and remained in communication with them, just as a council person.
Did you get that, Joe?
It's coming through.
Well, I got that. Also, somebody had to invite Mr. McCain. I mean, so I suppose he was chosen.
Right, or I was invited this evening because of my involvement with that pre-annexation agreement.
Yeah. Is that what you're referring to, Joe? Are you referring to Bill's presence here tonight?
I'm referring to both that and the negotiations.
Okay. As far as Bill being here tonight, I asked him because I was aware of his involvement in the negotiations between the city of Salisbury and Wicomico County. He had firsthand knowledge, and I thought that would be the best, one of the best people to have to discuss annexation, the pre-annexation agreement with the residents. Mayor Day would also like to address this.
I appreciate that promotion to doctor for a second there. But to the councilman's question also, the reason why Mr. McCain and Mr. Cannon and I were all on phone calls with one another, and I was also in conversations directly with County Executive Culver and Mr. Strasburg, is because they called. All four of those individuals called me multiple times in the stages of the negotiation about the annexation agreement to attempt to get the city to agree to provide this project and to ensure that we were on the same page. Had anyone else called at any point in time, I would, of course, take those calls, as I always do.
Did you get that, Joe?
Okay. My next question is, we're on a delay here.
Right.
Can you hear me, Calvin?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
My next question is, if Mr. McCain was in, we've just lost Pack 14. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. If Mr. McCain was involved in the negotiations, why did he not bring this information to the rest of the council?
Bill?
Number one, it's not even on our agenda, which I'm happy to share anything anyone would like to ask, but numerous council members have expressed interest in this. We've been talking about this for quite some time, ever since January. So, you know, we actually have not even met. This got tabled at the meeting we were supposed to discuss it. So the opportunity hasn't even been presented.
Well, that doesn't answer my question, but anyway, that was a good statement. We've lost Pack 14 here on TV, so I don't know if everybody else has lost it or not. But anyway, the next question, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be repetitive here. I've had folks calling in on this. We had a work session in January on the MOU, and we were supposed to have another work session on the pre-annexation agreement, and that never took place. Instead, it just came to the council for a vote. Was there a reason for that?
I personally can't answer that. Is anybody able to answer that question?
I cannot.
Council president put on the agenda.
Yeah, no, there's no one here that can answer that question.
Now, wait a minute, guys. You were going to answer all the questions tonight.
I'll answer that question.
Well, I just did. I can't.
Well, I can answer the question,
Okay.
but the council,
Now,
The council president put it on
Now,
the agenda.
You stated earlier that you didn't see, I think you said it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you didn't see any need to inform the residents of Kilburny or the Walston Switch Road corridor of what was going on. Did nobody on that commission or in the county executive's office think that this would not interest people or upset people to find out that there was a pre-annexation agreement taking place in her neighborhood? And why was this dismissed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Okay. I think it was you that said earlier that nobody seen the need for informing the people about a pre-annexation agreement
Can I answer that?
taking place in the neighborhood.
Can I answer that?
Anyone on the commission or in the county executive's office feel that there was a need to do that and that it would not, upset people when they heard about a pre-annexation agreement?
Okay. I can speak to that directly. At no time did I ever say that what you just said about the residents. In fact, I never even got involved in this until last Tuesday. I took it up because, quite the opposite, I felt like the residents did need. You and I had a discussion about that when I talked to you about when I used to live on Lakeview Drive, which is is adjacent to the city of Salisbury. And there had been, about 40 years ago, a discussion about the possible annexation, and I told you then that I understood what these people were thinking about. There has never been a time did I ever make such a statement that the residents don't need to know. It's quite the opposite.
Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood your statement earlier. Maybe somebody else said it, but I guess my question would be, due to the fact that this is such a large issue with the citizens, why wasn't there attempts made by the airport commission earlier to inform them? I'll leave it like that.
Well, the answer to the question on that is that at that point, it was the county council and the county executive's office that were handling it. And we just stood back and watched the process, because at that point, we weren't really brought into it, nor did we feel like we should go into it. At the part where it was tabled because there were concerns, and they became public in the April 7th County Council meeting, and then tabled. Shortly after that, when you had the second County Council meeting, and again expressed the constituents' concerns, that's when I decided that the Airport Commission needs to become a voice in this on behalf of everyone.
Mr. Peacock, can I
Yes.
add to that?
Yes.
I would just add to your points that when it comes to pre-annexation agreements, they're not secret documents or private documents, but there's also not a public notice associated with them. A good example of that is the pre-annexation agreement that exists that we found out about tonight on Walston Switch Road, even closer to Kilburny and the Walston Mobile Home Park, that I didn't even know about, and I'm the mayor of Salisbury. I'm the one who has to sign to execute that annexation once the pre-annexation agreement exists. Pre-annexation agreement is between a property owner and the municipality. There's not a third party to it. There's not public notice associated with it. Nobody gets a letter because they happen to be near it. It is purely between the municipality and the property owner. So it would be not only unusual, I don't think that there is a mechanism to create a special notification about it other than the regular public process of publicly talking about it. And I think in this case, that's what's happening right now. But I would also note that there's been public discussion about this for about 6 years.
Thank you,
Who
Mayor.
was that speaking?
That was Mayor Day.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Joe, can I just stop you just for a second? I want to do a double check to see where PAC 14 is.
They're back up.
Oh, we're back up?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, what's your next question?
Okay. When did the county or the airport commission first discover that this could not be an urban services agreement and had to be a pre-annexation agreement?
January.
Would that be something for you, Mayor Day?
I think it was, that's a good question. I think it was when then Council President Cannon or Vice President McCain, I'm not sure when you all reached out to us, but it was around then. I don't think many people recognized that was a requirement. The city knew it, and it was an assumed thing. It was referenced in the documents fairly deep in the operations agreement. But I don't think elected officials, and I obviously can't speak to the airport commission, but I don't think even the county executive or the director of administration was really following that as a requirement at the time, because so many people were aware of the old 1960s and 70s urban service agreements as a normal part of course back in the day that they existed. I don't think many people remembered or recognized that those were no longer legal.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Just to add to that, the city does not do urban service agreements. They don't have that in their code.
Yeah, that's right, because I have read where they did away with that some time ago. And as far as the airport commission is concerned, we weren't aware of any of this, and not likely should have, because it's this kind of thing is outside of our purview. When we did become aware that a pre-annexation agreement was being discussed, that was through the county executive's office, and it was brought up in the airport commission meetings. But all we knew was that it was being negotiated, and that's as much as we could add to it. You got another question, Joe?
Hopefully you heard
Other
you on
call.
TV.
Hello? Yeah, Joe, here. I think I must have lost you.
I think the other questions I had are kind of repetitive. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We're with you. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the last question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The last question is, from Hobbs Road to Walston Switch Road, Chop Tank, the Parsonsburg Fire Service has lost their service area due to annexation.
Okay.
So what's to keep this from happening?
Keep going. All right, is that the question? Okay. Who would like to address that?
Well, the annexation, I mean, the fire service changes when the annexation occurs, because Salisbury has to, correct me if I'm right, Mayor, Salisbury has to provide the public service, safety services to that area if it's been annexed in the city.
Yeah, Mr. Shipley's right. That Joe, if that were to happen, if annexation of the airport proper were to happen, which is really the only annexation on the table, which is a very long time away, if it ever happens, nothing necessarily. But as I mentioned in my brief remarks, or maybe my too long remarks, I don't know, there's precedent for an alternative arrangement. I mentioned that with police services. Every resident and property owner inside a municipal boundary is entitled under the law to every service that a municipality offers. But there is precedent for not providing it. Today, there are a few small properties where even inside the municipal boundaries of the city of Salisbury, Delmar or Parsonsburg fire departments provide service to the city of Salisbury by the agreement of the Salisbury fire chief. And the reason is it's closer to those fire stations, significantly closer to the Parsonsburg or Delmar fire stations in those cases. The same might be true in Fruitland, I'm not sure. And but there's also precedent for that under police services. All the schools in the city of Salisbury, the sheriff's office headquarters, which is soon to be, I think, developed inside of the city of Salisbury, the Civic Center, the government office building, all are first due Wicomico County Sheriff's Office locations.
Anybody like to add? Okay. Joe, you still with me? Hey, Joe? You still with me? Hello? Hey, Joe?
You go.
I think I lost you. Okay. Let's see, we've had several more calls.
I think that's Senator Carosa calling. She just texted me, said she's calling yourself.
Yeah, I've got, let me get a couple of these missed calls here.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 41060.
Okay. Senator Carosa, we have you on speaker. Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, we have you on speaker. Senator Carosa, do you have a question or comment?
Okay. Okay, so what I'm watching now, I thought I was watching live. Yes, this is Senator Mary Beth Cruz. I must be on a delayed feed, but I wanted to just call in and first of all, thank you for holding this forum to answer the questions. Many of us, at least in my position, when I heard that there were some legitimate questions and concerns being raised, took action, went back, reviewed both resolutions. I wanted to make sure that I understood them as the state senator, representing Wicomico County and a strong supporter of the airport overall, but specifically of this airport water extension project because it's such a key project for the future growth at the airport. And I know we talked earlier about the progress that was being made out there. And so when I heard, thinking that this was all on track because we were successful in securing the $4.4 million from the state of Maryland, and that was back in October, and many of us understood this was on track. Then I understood some questions were being raised, and when I heard about those, I went personally, reviewed the resolutions, and then checked again to make sure that what I understood, that the area to be served would be limited at all times to the county-owned land, the airport, that it is a denied access line, and that neither the county nor the city has the authority to expand the area to be served, and that's actually written into those agreements. So I wanted to confirm that for myself, and then after doing so, I initiated and talked to leadership at the Parsonsburg Fire Company, as well as leadership at the Kilburn Homeowners Association, again, to make the effort to say, I understand that you had these concerns. I believe they've been addressed and then would be further addressed with specific questions in the forum that you're holding tonight. So I want to thank everybody who's participating in the forum tonight. I believe a lot of questions have been posed and answered, and would urge that we continue to move forward on the project.
Thank you so very much, Senator Carosa. We appreciate your comments on that and support.
And I will continue. If any constituents have questions, I'll continue to respond to them as well. But I actually initiated the response when I heard there were concerns. So again, thank you for taking a leadership role in putting this together to respond to the other questions that are out there. Thanks for allowing me to call in.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Senator. We have another call that's just coming in. Hello? Okay, do you mind if I put you on speaker? Okay. You're on speaker. Go ahead.
Oh, I see it now. Okay. It's just a small delay.
Yeah, there is.
So I just have some questions. I'm a little late getting to the actual TV portion of this. I may have missed a few things, but I just came on the last end of, I believe Jake Day was explaining the service for the police and the fire. So is there anything in the resolution that stops a new council from rewording the actual verbiage in the resolution, say next year, the year from now, and allowing city services to expand to those areas, or any new construction becoming city property?
Is that something, Paul?
Yeah, I'll take it. What we have, again, is a denied access line that has been mandated by the state. There's been these agreements that have been negotiated between the city and the county. If a future county council wish to revisit those agreements, of course, it would have to be revisited with a future mayor and city council. So, I guess you could say everything could be discussed at a future time, but I don't think, I think these agreements are, they well cover this particular water line and all of its different aspects.
Does that answer your question?
So, it more or less, the county council could hold another meeting and change the word that says currently now to more or less the city could annex other areas. It's just depending upon the wording that's in the current resolution. And that's something that could be voted upon at a different time if you change, correct?
Mayor Day is going to answer that.
No, that's incorrect.
Did you get that?
That is incorrect. And as it stands from the fire department stance, he has no plans on the city servicing that area. That's the part I missed. My apologies. I know he just addressed it. I just caught him on the very end.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I just want to quote from the letter. The city of Salisbury has no desire to annex Kilburn Estates now, and I believe there will never be incentive to the city government and our existing taxpayers to annex Kilburn Estates. The same goes for annexation of any other existing developed property in that area, including Walston Mobile Home Park. And in terms of provision of service to the airport, again, it's county property, and there is precedent. While we don't intend, have any goal or objective to, and I do not think it would be in the best interest of the citizens of Salisbury to annex the airport, ever. There is also precedent, should that day when 30 years and annexation up to the airport occur, there is precedent to find another way to provide that service.
Did that answer your question?
That did. The last question I have is, at what point does the county or the council have any date set to set up our own county services, being water and septic?
I could answer that question. I do let you know that the Wicomico County government has instituted a study or a report called the Wicomico County Master Water and Sewer Plan. George Miles and Buhr is working with the county on this master water and sewer plan, and we are to try to answer the question for the county is, how would the county address water and sewer problems outside the municipal limits anytime going forward into the future? As a master plan, we are looking at 50 to 150 years and beyond. We are looking at all areas outside municipal systems. We are also looking at the small municipal systems. We are also looking at rural villages such as Quantico, Tyaskin, Powellville. The purpose of that master plan is to give the county some ideas about how they would address future problems. They understand that private wells and septic systems don't last forever. The Kilburn area is part of that study. There will be public hearings or public information about that project in the fall. It's more likely, and it's been stated already today, that we would anticipate failing septic systems to be a bigger problem, particularly in the Kilburn area and other areas, more so than water problems. But I would applaud or praise the county for undertaking this study at this time. And there are a lot of reasons for that study. It's going to address three primary significant factors. It's going to address public health issues, it's going to address economic issues, and it's going to address the overall environment. And it's going to respect the Chesapeake Bay Initiative, and it's going to put the county in a position to deal with nutrient loads that are the county's responsibility going into the Chesapeake Bay. And it will take, and this master study will have input, significant input and import to the city of Salisbury, city of Fruitland, Delmar, and all the municipalities.
Mr. Peacock, if I can add to that.
Sure.
I just want to be clear that, and on that topic, the city of Salisbury, and I think the same is true for the city of Fruitland, town of Delmar, et cetera, are ready and willing partners who have been engaged in those conversations and will continue to be supportive of those efforts. Not every part of Wicomico County is in a geographic or logical location to receive municipal services. And so finding alternatives to rural villages, already existing neighborhoods far from municipal boundaries, those should be solved without municipal services or without the unnecessary and costly, I think, extension of municipal services that don't have a return for the taxpayers that would make sense. And so there's not sort of a one-for-one, I think, trade-off of, we can provide service there in some other way instead of the city. It's just there's a logical boundary, where beyond which it just won't make sense, to the caller's question.
Did you get that?
Yes, sir. Again, I'm watching it on television, which is about a 10-second delay. So
Oh, sure.
I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone's answer. I think as a business owner and a resident here on the east side, our biggest concerns are keeping the city in the city. There's a reason we live out here in the countryside. We just want to be a little further away from the city. City has their own problems. The countryside, we have our problems, but we are living where we live for a reason. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I look forward to the answers for the municipal systems they're going to provide out in the rural areas as soon as you guys can come up with some answers for that.
Which questions are those?
That's the one he just asked.
Okay.
When they finally have the study complete,
Okay.
and they're able to give us any further direction on the municipality.
Okay, we certainly appreciate you calling in.
Thank you very much.
What we've seen tonight here is democracy at work, and I think that is certainly worth the evening in of itself. We have another question here. It says, "Good evening. Mayor Day's statement that the public hearing is not necessary for this resolution to be voted on is untrue. Please refer to the Open Meeting Act, Chapter 2.
Nobody ever said that, not me or anybody else.
Okay. At the present time, checking all the communication devices. We have no phone calls, we have no texts, and we have no more emails coming in at this point. I want to deeply thank everyone at this table and Mayor Day for working with us this evening. It has been a real exercise, as I said, in democracy. I sincerely hope everybody out there that has been listening to PAC 14 tonight, we have been able to answer the questions to your satisfaction. And I want to thank you, the public, for contributing to this, for bringing your concerns and allowing us to be able to address them. Having said all that, I'd like to declare this evening closed, and everyone stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for